This is kind of similar to last year's DeepSeek moment in the sense that you can't get everybody woken up to seeing the power of the model at a fraction of the cost.
Palak and I are very excited to introduce Altimeter's new video series, First Pass. There's always some new development in AI, something worth discussing, and our hope and goal is to bring together experts in the field to chat through these topics. Our first guest is Simon Moe. Our first topic is GLM 5.2. Simon is the co-creator of vLLM project and co-founder and CEO of Inferact. GLM 5.2 is the model that's taken the world by storm over the last week. It compares favorably to Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5 on a lot of the leading benchmarks, while also coming in at 1/5 or 1/6 the cost on a per token basis, which obviously has huge implications. We now have an open weights model that seems to be at frontier quality at a fraction of the cost. We thought no one better than Simon to discuss this model with us today and some of its implications. So Simon, thanks for joining us.
For GLM 5.2, this is kind of similar to last year's DeepSeek moment in the sense that you can't get everybody woken up to seeing the power of the model at a fraction of the cost as the frontier capability. One thing I would like to get out front, GLM 5.2 is one representative of all the Chinese model labs so far. Over the last few months, there has been GLM 5.2, Kimi 2.6 and 2.7 code, Minimax M3, and DeepSeek version 4. All of those are pushing each other on the frontier level at a fraction of the cost. It's not just this model, rather it's a collection of them.
So I guess when we look at the public benchmarks, specifically in engineering tasks in places like Design Arena, GLM 5.2 really seems to be on par, or in some cases even better than Opus 4.8, GPT 5.5, some of the frontier models. Is that consistent with what you're seeing? Is GLM 5.2 really at the frontier?
From what we're seeing, the true capability of GLM, along with the whole class of model, is number one, very effective use of the 1 million context window. And the performance does not degrade over time, both in terms of system performance and model performance. So that makes it very well suited for long horizon tasks. And this is what we're seeing where on long horizon tasks like coding and also design where it requires long context window and many other extensive tool use or office work, the model is doing quite well. And in fact, I would say there's an impression of both in terms of good enough quality and matching closer to frontier performance, as well as speed. The model runs quite fast and a lot faster than even the fast mode of each provider.
Great. So we are seeing that it's pretty close to frontier in capability. But now let's look at cost. When I look at cost, it's about $1.40 per million input tokens, $4.40 per million output tokens, which compares to kind of the Opus 4.8 model, GPT 5.5 model, being more in the $5 per million input tokens, $25 to $30 per million output tokens. Looking at kind of the blended 80% input, 20% output, $2 per million tokens for GLM 5.2, $9 to $10 for Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5. So kind of call it like on that benchmark, 1/5 the cost. We'll get into some of the hidden costs in a minute, but does that smell right to you? Is it really kind of like 1/5 the cost?
Yeah, from what we're seeing, this is how the inference spread or the inference margin has been for the last year or so. Because all of the provider today was assuming full saturation as a performance SLA and all the requirements for interactive workload, they're positive margin. And so that means GLM at this price is still going to be operating under positive margin and at a fairly efficient way. Keep in mind though, GLM is a 700 billion parameter model. So this might be a smaller model that are a lot more efficient to serve compared to the biggest model, say Opus or even GPT 5.5. Of course, we don't know the exact sizing of those models from the proprietary side, but we do know, looking at what we have, especially how the model runs well in vLLM and along with our users and customers, this model particularly, is pretty cost effective if you bake in the good enough market level GPU pricing, and then you can have a positive, healthy margin on top. And it is not an unreasonable price at all. In fact, fairly economical and valuable.
Yeah, I think it's a it's a hidden secret how profitable inference is for a lot of the labs and all these providers. I do think there's like a hidden cost, right? When I think about cost, yeah, the simple equation is like cost equals price times quantity. And the price is what we just discussed, which is called $2 per million input output tokens. The quantity is something separate. And the quantity is what we think about as token efficiency. So for a given request, how many tokens does the model consume to generate an output? Models that are highly token inefficient might generate a lot more tokens per request to generate the same level of output. I think in our research pegs GLM 5.2 at about 2.5x less token efficient. So for any given request, it might create 2.5 times more tokens to generate the same output as a frontier model like Opus 4.8. So if you kind of like smash those two together, it's maybe 1/5 the price, but double the inefficiencies, which maybe leads to more of maybe it's like twice as cheap, not 5 times as cheap. I mean, how do you think about kind of token efficiency, or what other hidden costs might exist in serving these open source models, which the headline price feels really cheap, but that might not be the actual all-in cost that you're paying?
That's an interesting point, but I wouldn't over-index on it, as this can just be a pretty transient or temporary situation. Recently, Kimi 2.7 code come out, and their headline improvement over Kimi 2.6 is 30% less token used during syncing and deliver the same task. So there's a clear path and way for each model provider and lab to be able to reduce the token usage. And it is just, after all, ensuring you get the right data, the right algorithm, and then comparing and training the model against a similar set of benchmark. It is something that you can clearly optimize against. So even though today you might have a lot more tokens, but keep in mind, as I mentioned before, you're actually serving at 2x, 4x speed. In some cases, if you really want to go fast, you can break through a 1,000 tokens per second easily for these kind of models. So, like, yes, it's a little bit inefficient, but maybe 3 months later it won't be. And very likely, as long as the folks decide to focus on this problem, and it's a very much to be solved and easy to be solved problem.
Wow. Well, I mean, Opus 4.8 came out, just a little over 3 weeks ago, and we already have an open source model, GLM, that's pretty much on par from a quality perspective, and is better cost and efficiency. Is that like what you expect to see? Like, do you think this gap is going to just be 1 month between frontier and open source?
So I think at this point, frontier and open source is a lot more mixed, intertwined. It's all about what is the environment for your RL run, what are you training or targeting towards, what is the set of benchmark you picked, right? Again, like, I will go back to the just comparing open source model a little bit, because that's a domain we know really, really well. Among GLM, Kimi, and Minimax, the 3 model out there, all of those target like 1 million context window, but they have different kinds of focuses. For example, Minimax have specifically highlighted their emphasis on dataset of office work and multimodal perception. So that makes managing the real, like creating PowerPoints or other tasks a lot more productive. For Kimi, is all about code, but it's productive coding, and then very much like MCP, agent swarm, and some cases in the middle. One of the benchmarks they have is Kimi Claw, their open claw version of their benchmark tooling. And then GLM is about frontier level coding, frontier SWE, right? And that is about like running hour-long, days-long, long horizon auto research optimization, a very, very hard task that you cannot even imagine human to be able to complete within weeks. So every lab and every model come out with different emphasis. And then this is what, in some cases, you can see, oh, wow, this is approaching frontier quality, because that just happens to be for ZAI. This is a problem they ended up choosing to focus on. And then therefore, you are able to effectively use the model that they released for that particular set of tasking environment. Now, previously, when we're doing pre-training, we'll say it's all about data mix. Now it's all about the environment mix on what are the environment and what are the benchmark you're setting and to improve the model for.
All right, Simon, so what does this all mean? Is this model, is GLM 5.2 the canary in the coal mine for the big labs, for the OpenAIs, for the Anthropics? Does this spell the end of token maxing? Are the rebels armed with kind of cheaper, faster, better models at a fraction of the cost? But what does this all mean?
So there has already been this kind of divergence from all in on frontier tokens, premium tokens already, as over the last 2 quarters, everybody has been in too much on token maxing. So the open source model has been already slowly gaining momentum. I do think the GLM moment is a very useful one, as we're signifying on frontier level coding tasks, especially the very difficult one. Now you can also replace portion of your usage of Claude Opus or GPT 5.5 with GLM 5.2. But there's already a major fraction of enterprises today considering switching off their daily driver or regular usage or automated background agent from the most expensive model back to the open source one, so that number one, they can control the data. Number two, they can also just control the cost way better, as we mentioned in the very beginning about the cost differences. And what we're going to see probably in the next quarter or so is this full Pareto curve start to emerge. There's always a place for premium token, and there's always a place for the most productive, high throughput, but potentially slower tokens. And different models will start to differentiate on what they specialize on, and different team will have different taste in terms of what they prefer to use and what they integrate with. Yes, this is indeed a great moment for open source model.
Awesome. Well, Simon, thanks for joining us on our first episode of First Pass. We really enjoyed the discussion on GLM 5.2 and what it means for open source models.
Thank you for having me. Great to do our first pass.